friends, regardless what country you may be logging in from. We are glad you are here. In a spirit of welcome, I invite those who are here in the sanctuary to greet those attending from home by turning towards the camera near the Welcome and Congregation banner and offer your greetings right from where you are. And those here in the sanctuary, let's turn and greet one another.
Morning and welcome. With the changing of the clocks, we are particularly grateful you are here on time. My name is Ivan Correa, and I'm your worship associate this morning. We gather to worship our hearts alive with hope that here we will be truly seen, that here we will be welcomed into the garden of this community where the simple and the elegant, the fluted and frilled, the shy and dramatic complement one another and are treasured. You are welcome here no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background. You're welcome here to join us as we proclaim worth in our spiritual journey. You're welcome to join us as we sing songs that uplift our very beings. All are welcome as we worship that which gives each of us meaning and value. No matter what you call this building, this hour, or this gathering of people, we worship as one body, illuminated by the light of the chalice. After worship, all are invited to enjoy refreshments and conversation in the Sims room. Those wishing to enjoy conversation while remaining masked are welcome to linger in the sanctuary. If you are not eating or drinking, we encourage you to remain masked and connect with folks in the pews. We send our good wishes to our adult choir, who is singing with the UU Church of Reading this morning, as their choir joined us last week. After worship, all are invited, even folks who came an hour late, to conversation, coffee, and refreshments in the Sims room. Those who wish to stay masked are welcome to linger in the pews. If you're not eating or drinking, we encourage you to engage those who are remaining in the sanctuary. At noon, there will be a facilitated conversation about today's service in the parlor. Virtual attendees may join us by Zoom. The link can be found in the after worship announcements and in the Sunday morning email. Now let us open our hearts and minds to the spirit of worship.
Open up the doors. Slough off the musty smell of unused joy and stored up sorrow. Knock rust off the hinges if you have to, and let your breath precede you inside. Open the doors more. Make room for a shaft of sunlight to cross the threshold. Give the dust motes something to dance about. Open the doors wider still. Pour yourself through the gap, strut or sneak or side as suits you best. Bind up the wounds that keep you from entering whole. Open the doors as far as they will go. Draw on the strength of the stones beneath you. Ground yourself in a firm sense of who you are. Stand as a beacon welcoming the next seeker and shine far beyond the lintel and still. Open all that you are. Heighten and deepen your connections to the world around you. Broaden your definition of neighbor. Grow into the largest target for grace that you can muster. Pray to become a gateway for even greater love and compassion. Open the doors, my friends, lest we keep the stranger out and condemn ourselves to prisons of our own making.
I don't think Alice Levering is here this morning. I now invite Maya to kindle our chalice flame as we dedicate the chalice with words by Andrew Pakula. Let there be light, the light of joy, of happiness, of contentment. May it illuminate our paths and fill our lives with peace. And let there be dark, for it is from our dark places that we are brought forward and impelled towards growth. It is in these places that we realize compassion and learn to love. And there was day, and there was night, and there was joy, and there was sorrow, and it was good. Please rise in body or in spirit to join us in singing hymn number 12 in the gray hymnal, O Life that maketh all things new.
I would like to invite all those who are young or young at heart to come forward for a story. Good morning.
Morning.
Look at these sleepy faces. I'm sleepy too. I'm right there with you. So today, I'm going to read a book to you. You can look at the pictures on the screen, but I'll also hold them up if you like. The story that I told last week was about Krishna. Do you remember that? And how he painted his friend Radha's face to match his own. So this is a story about being different color, and how that could be a wonderful thing to be. Yes. What did you want to say? You've heard of this? Well, so this is written by someone who's almost as famous as Krishna, almost. His name is Colin Kaepernick. Has anybody heard of Colin Kaepernick before? Colin Kaepernick is an athlete. He was famous for taking a stand, or rather taking a knee, taking a stand by taking a knee at a football game during the anthem. And you can ask your parents more about that later. Sorry, parents. Okay, this is called I Color Myself Different. Hey, I'm Colin. I read books, I play sports and games, and I have a lot of fun with my friends. Do you guys do any of those things? Do you do anything like that? Yeah. I don't know too many kids who look like me, which makes me super cool, because I'm different, you know? I have super cool skin, super cool hair, and a super cool family. Sometimes it's not easy, but being one of a kind sure is amazing. Somebody has to do it. And that somebody is me. But one day, I had to learn that being different takes courage. It happened at school. Good morning, class. Today we're going to learn about families, Mrs. Musa said. Grab a sheet of paper and your art boxes. We'll start by drawing what our families look like. This is going to be easy, I thought to myself. I have the best family ever. I'm going to draw my mom, my sister, and our kitty cat, Mr. Noodles, said Sarah. Well, I have a huge family with my parents, grandparents, and lots of cousins. I need 2 papers, joked Eric, my best friend. I didn't say anything because drawing is serious business. I had to choose just the right pencil, the just right paper, and just right colors. I had to focus. First, I outlined, scribbled, shaded, erased, and outlined some more. Then I laid out all the crayons so I could pick the perfect colors. Aha, got it. Finished. Mrs. Musa asked me to show our family portrait to the class, asked us one by one. I love seeing how families look different and beautiful in their own ways. I couldn't wait to share mine. This is my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, and my dog Kiwi. We like to go to the park, eat cookies, and... But before I could even finish, Becky blurted out, "Why are you the only brown one in your family?" Then I heard from the back, "Why did you color yourself different?" At first, I froze. I was surprised, shocked, stunned. I liked being brown and different, but the questions made me feel bad. Then I remembered when I had asked my mom the exact same question. "Mom, why am I the only brown one in our family? Why am I a different color?" "Honey, some children join families when they are born, and others join families after they are born. When you were a baby, Colin, we decided to adopt you, and you made our family whole," Mom answered. Adopted means different? Adopted means special, Mom smiled. Being adopted is an extra special way to join a family. Even though we don't share the same skin color, we share the same love, and that's what matters most. Ever since Mom wrapped me in that warm hug, I knew having brown skin and being adopted made me special. I have brown eyes, a brown nose, and brown hands. Just like the people who inspire, create, and lead and change the world. You see these pictures of all these people? These are really important people in our history. And we can read more about that at coffee hour, because I'm going to bring this book, and there's more information on all of these people. That made it easy for me to unfreeze quickly. I stood tall, opened my eyes, and said, "I'm brown. I color myself different. I'm me, and I'm magnificent." I said it a little louder so those in the back could hear me. "I'm brown. I color myself different. I'm me, and I'm magnificent." "You are magnificent, magnificently brown and magnificently different," affirmed Mrs. Musa. "Brown is beautiful," added a classmate. "Brown is the color of my favorite superhero." And the color of my doctor, chimed in another. And the color of my best friend, added Eric. Mrs. Musa smiled and clapped her hands. Wonderful, my magnificent students. Then she talked about the ways people and families can be different and full of love. I love my brown skin and I love my family. I love being different. As we talked, I snuck a few seconds to add something very special to my family portrait before hanging it up on the wall. What did he add? Hearts. That day I was proud. I was proud of my brown skin. I was proud to be me. It was the day that I colored myself different for all the world to see. And so I can read you more of this at coffee hour, so come find me with the book. Right now we're going to ask our grown-ups to sing us to RE classes. The words are in your order of service.
I now invite us into a time of centering, first through words and then through a ritual, kindling of the light, a time to light a candle here in the sanctuary or at home, to signify a joy or sorrow you carry within. At that time, if you'd like a candle brought to you, please raise your hand. After we kindle the light, we'll be together for a time of shared silence, out of which we'll remain seated as we sing hymn number 86 in the gray hymnal, Blessed Spirit of My Life. We begin with a meditation by Meg Barnhouse. All summer, workers have been building a brick wall along the road by my neighborhood. Against the brutal heat, they stretch a tarp overhead to get a little shade. I've watched them take bricks in their dusty brown hands, one by one, butter them thickly with mortar, line them up, and tap them down, row by row. One man, who looks to be in his 70s, is the leader. His skin is the color of bittersweet chocolate. His beard is gray. Slender and tall, he moves from one group of bricklayers to the next, reaching and bending, looking like a heron in a marsh. When he pauses, he stands very straight. I see him teach the others how to do the work. He stoops over to look at a line of bricks, hands on his thighs, inspecting the work. Sometimes as I drive by, I see him put his hand on the back of the person he's teaching. Often they are both smiling. He looks like he loves what he's doing. I wonder how he can love building walls day after day, handling bricks, teaching the art of laying bricks. Is it the teaching that he loves? Does he love the wall itself? Does he look forward to seeing it finished? Or does he love the process, the feel of the bricks in his hands, the squish of the mortar, the challenge of making the symmetry of pillars and arches, the geometry of it? I think from the look on his face that he loves the process. I imagine that he never thinks about the end of the project, the completion of the wall. I want to be like that, and I am, I guess. In my job as a minister, the bricks are stories. I hear stories of family and work, stories of loss and reconciliation, stories of rejection and disaster, illness and healing, birthing and dying. I tell stories every Sunday, and in between, teaching, challenging, confessing, inviting people to learn and laugh and think. Brick by brick, story by story, we build a congregation, a people. Seeing the patterns, the symmetry, the plain joy of setting one story on the other, sustained by the strong and beautiful structures they make. We will never be finished, and it's okay. Let us now kindle the light.
What is the purpose of this church? By Jessica York. Unitarian Universalism is a living faith. We think that people should be free to believe what they must believe, the truth of their life experiences, instead of professing a belief in what we are told to believe. Being a living faith means that any one of us can change what we believe if we experience a deeper truth that contradicts our previous beliefs. But in order to change, you have to be open to new thoughts, new ideas, and new experiences. In 1948, most congregations in the United States were segregated by the color of their members' skin. Some were segregated by law, others by custom, or by a lack of actively trying to welcome and include all people. The First Unitarian Church of Chicago was one of those congregations. Although their church was located in a neighborhood with many African Americans, only whites could join according to the written bylaws, rules of the church, and according to custom. The day came that many members began to believe they needed to take action against racism if they really wanted to live their lives, their values and principles. The minister, the Reverend Leslie Pennington, was ready for this day and ready to take action. So was James Luther Adams, a famous liberal theologian and social ethicist. Dr. Adams taught at the Meadville Lombard Theological School right across the street from the First Unitarian Church of Society of Chicago. And he was a member of the congregation's board of directors. Along with some others, Reverend Pennington and James Luther Adams proposed a change in the church's bylaws to desegregate the church and welcome people, whatever the color of their skin. When the congregation's board of directors considered the desegregation proposal, most of them supported it. However, one member of the board objected. Your new program is making desegregation into a creed, he said. Desegregation was a very controversial topic. In 1948, anything about skin color and racism was controversial. Respectful debate ensured at the First Unitarian Society of Chicago, both sides felt in their hearts that their belief was right. The debate went on in the board of directors meeting until the early hours of the morning. Everyone was exhausted and frustrated. Finally, James Luther Adams asked the person who had voiced the strongest objection, "What do you say is the purpose of this church?" Suddenly, everyone was listening. Everyone wanted to hear the answer to this crucial question. Probably the person who objected was listening especially hard to his own heart as well as to the words he had heard from other board members through the long discussion. The board member who opposed opening the church to people of color finally replied, "Okay, Jim, the purpose of this church is to get hold of people like me and change them."
Thank you, John and Cheryl. I think that was a preview of coming attractions of heaven. The Winchester Unitarian Society has a long history of small group ministry, circles of 8 to 12 people who meet about once a month for personal and spiritual reflection. One group is Deep Wells. At its center, we share our spiritual questions and practices with each other, along with the gifts and sorrows of our lives. Members of the group take turns leading us in a spiritual exercise. Deep Wells met this past Thursday. Ivan, this morning's worship associate, led us that night in the exercise. And in that exercise, he asked an insightful question. Why? Why do we engage in spiritual reflection? It took me a while to answer this question. Finally, I found my words. I don't believe there is an intrinsic meaning to life, only the meaning that we make. And what I find meaningful are experiences that reveal how my understanding of the world and my understanding of myself are limited. One of these meaningful experiences happened many years ago in my first Unitarian Universalist congregation. Someone stood in that pulpit, as I'm standing in this one this morning, and read what is, for many, a beloved poem by Mary Oliver. It begins, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on." Mary Oliver's invitation to set aside a quest to be better than or anything different for myself was profound. The reminder that we are not alone in life's struggles, healed some of the inner loneliness I carried with me. Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese, gave me a different mirror to understand what it could mean to be human and what it could mean to be me. This poem no longer has the same effect on me. This happens when you read and hear something many, many times. But over the years that I've been reading and hearing Wild Geese, I've also been growing and changing, learning more authentically to live into Oliver's understanding of, as she says at the poem's conclusion, our place in the family of things. I've learned to better embody a sense of belonging in the world, and being part of a congregation, first as a lay leader and then as a minister, has been an important part of this growth. I know I'm not alone. I believe it is impossible to be engaged in congregational life in an ongoing way and remain the same. Whatever your theology, within a congregation, we have experiences which some might call encounters with God, a God who loves us exactly the way we are, and she loves us so much she doesn't want us to stay that way. This is a place of evolution. We are shaped by music and sermons and memorials. Our learning and well-being grows through classes and workshops and covenant groups. But it's not just the formal ministries that are agents of change. It's the potlucks and, as reflected in today's reading, heated debates about policy and volunteering for the rummage sale. We learn through all elements of congregational life, rendering not just the exercises shared in Deep Wells' spiritual practices, but the whole endeavor of potential catalyst for growth. Put another way, as religious educator Maria Harris affirms, the congregation is the curriculum. This morning, we consider what we teach and what we learn by being part of congregational life, especially in regards to race. I'm inspired to explore this question by a resource issued by the Unitarian Universalist Association, Widening the Circle of Concern. A past crisis revealing institutional racism within the denomination inspired a thorough review by the Commission on Institutional Change. The commission interviewed hundreds of Unitarian Universalists from a wide range of places, congregations, and identities, learning what has challenged and what has nurtured racial equity in the faith. The resource, Widening the Circle, explores many areas of congregational life. After its release, our own racial justice planning group has offered workshops on different chapters, such as hospitality and governance. Today, we explore the chapter Educating for Liberation in an hour-long workshop with hymns. My reflection also draws from other sources of inspiration. We hope that you'll come to the parlor at noon to further explore the findings of the commission beyond my reflection. One thing I learned from a leader in my previous congregation is the importance of mirrors and windows. Her professional experience was in public education, but the wisdom is transferable to faith communities. It's important for everyone to have mirrors, cultural expressions that resonate, and windows, opportunities to view someone else's world, to learn. For example, my experience with Mary Oliver's Wild Geese was a powerful mirror as it spoke to my personal sense of spiritual longing and offered me a more loving understanding of myself. But the challenge is that congregations, no matter their efforts to counter oppressions in the secular world, often replicate bias without intending to. So those with greater privilege often experience an abundance of mirrors and few windows in congregational life, while the reverse is true for people of color, people with disabilities, and queer people. This dynamic is reinforced by some communities seeking racial equity through practicing colorblindness, putting a preemptive end to discussions of race. Some argue that when we learn to not talk about religion or politics to be polite, we fail to learn how to have conversations about things that matter. The same is true for race. Those of us who are white sometimes avoid talking about race as it can inspire feelings of discomfort, a reaction named white fragility. Widening the Circle articulates the Commission's perspective clearly. The goal of anti-racist work is not to make anyone feel guilty. The goal is to change congregational cultures by changing minds and changing behaviors. And guilt is not an effective catalyst for change. Educating for Liberation has moved me to think about what we do and are trying to do here at WUS. As demonstrated by today's first reflection, we seek to be a community where it's normal to talk about race and racial differences. Colin Kaepernick's book might be a meaningful mirror for children of color, adopted children, and interracial families. There is a notice in each order of service affirming our commitment that every worship service includes a contribution by a person or community of color. A member once said that perhaps a more authentic way to be an anti-racist congregation is to simply create multicultural worship services without the acknowledgement. I replied that the notice is more for me than for anyone else, a public statement keeping me accountable Sunday to Sunday, for we live in a culture that does not insist on inclusion. For our congregation to be a countercultural space, it takes intention, which is not always easy or convenient. That notation is a regular lesson for me about the importance of mirrors for those who've been marginalized. If the congregation is the curriculum, there are two examples, and these are two examples of explicit teaching. Maria Harris affirms that congregations have three kinds of curricula: explicit, implicit, and null. I've named some examples of explicit curricula, that which is clearly and directly communicated as reality. Implicit curricula send an equally powerful message, but through unwritten and unspoken means. One example is worship culture. In some congregations, congregants are welcome, even encouraged to respond to the preacher. Amen, preach it. In some congregations, attendees are moved to speak in tongues. In our welcome, we affirm openness to all people and diverse beliefs. But I ask our longtime members, when is the last time someone responded to a sermon in the moment? And have you ever observed anyone speaking in tongues? How we worship is just one way to worship. If someone with a different worship background came to one of our services, what would they learn about what is expected to belong? Null curricula are absences that make a statement. An example is the quinceañera celebration. In many Latin American cultures, 15-year-old girls are celebrated through a rite of passage, honoring the transition from childhood to womanhood. I also ask longtime members, when have we hosted a quinceañera? And what does that communicate about our collective connection to people from Hispanic cultures? Perhaps you're now thinking, so Heather wants us to start speaking in tongues now. That's not what I'm saying. More that there are countless ways to be human and to engage in spiritual practices. When we experience someone making different choices, they're providing a valuable window into human diversity. And the extent to which these alternative ways of being inhabit cultural space, once dominated by a different norm, that's not a loss. It's bringing mirrors and windows into balance. Assuming an idea or practice is in harmony with our espoused values, there is room to worship, to socialize, to protest, to advocate, to serve differently than how we've always done it. If the congregation is the curriculum, absolutely everything we do sends a message. It is common for some of these messages to conflict with one another. It is impossible to fully embody the countercultural values that we espouse. But moving closer to our vision depends on developing awareness and intentional change. For me, educating liberation comes down to this. We live in a society built on a foundation of racial inequality. For any congregation to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, this means dismantling that foundation, not only out there in the world, but in here, in our sanctuary and in our individual hearts, minds, and spirits. This is a theological mandate. Anti-racism is not one social action issue on a menu of options, but as part of our deep humanism should be part of our core identity. The liberation we seek is not just for people of color, but for all of us, denied the possibilities that come through deep communion between diverse peoples. With this in mind, Widening the Circle makes a case for training lay leaders, ministers, and staff towards better understanding white supremacy culture, how it shows up in congregations, and what actions serve as effective antidotes. They acknowledge that one obstacle is the cost of training and recommend that the UUA develop a program similar to our comprehensive sexuality program, Our Whole Lives, that provides accurate information about racism and how to unlearn its assumptions. This is perhaps the exact opposite of bills and laws across the country seeking to remove critical race theory from classrooms and to prevent even discussion about race and racism. It is the opposite of denial and unproductive guilt, hopefully a catalyst towards generations of UUs learning in the language of Widening the Circle, emotional maturity, and productive conflict. To the credit of our Racial Justice Planning Group, they have recognized the need for focused coaching and have sought to engage many constituencies of the Winchester Unitarian Society, primarily leadership groups and committees. They have done this at no financial cost to the congregation, but at great cost to their free time and calendars. Using a resource by UU leader Julica Herman de la Fuente, the planning group has invited leaders to consider where our congregation is on a spectrum from being racially unaware to actively anti-racist, and how the particular work of a given committee appears on this spectrum. The conversations have generated a wide range of responses, from some leaders enthusiastic about the goals of anti-racism to others resistant to the idea that change is needed or that anti-racism is not my issue. One committee refused to meet with the planning group. It is no surprise that members of a UU congregation would have wildly diverse reactions. I often say that with 3 UUs, you have 5 opinions. We may not be very diverse in our ethnicity, but we are diverse in our philosophies. But as a casual review of the daily news reveals, the need for our nation and its people to evolve in regards to race is critical. We all need to learn and grow, and where we have the capacity to bring others along. And if we cannot do this soul work here, where can we do it? This is our spiritual home. Today's reflection began with an experience I had in worship. Around that same time, I had a similar worship experience that also comes to mind. When we sang the familiar hymn, Amazing Grace, I noticed an intriguing notation in our gray hymnal. In the line, that saved a wretch like me, there's an asterisk by the word wretch. The asterisk at the bottom indicates that one can replace the word wretch with soul. Like Mary Oliver's affirmation that you do not have to be good, the freedom to reject inherent wretchedness was empowering. I now always make that substitution when I sing. But the history behind the hymn offers different lessons. As I heard the story, its creator, John Newton, worked as an enslaver. One day he had a crisis of conscience and turned his ship of enslaved people around, never to traffic humans again. The true story is less dramatic. Surviving a bad storm at sea made him significantly more religious. After he gave up sailing for medical reasons, his religiosity inspired him to enter the ministry. In time, he experienced a moral conversion and thought back to his past vocation with shame. He then joined the abolitionist movement. One could say that the church got a hold of someone like him and changed him. And one could say that changing lives and changing people is a significant purpose of church. Before this change, Newton held wretched views about his fellow human beings and engaged in wretched behavior, yet his soul was not beyond the capacity for growth. His experience reminds us of the promise of Unitarian Universalism. No one is beyond the possibility of moving towards greater good where there is will and encouragement. And coming here week after week, bringing not just our bodies, but our vulnerable selves, giving our time, talent, and treasure, supports us in this positive movement. How and how much people change depends on our collective intention and our investment. It depends on the depth of our commitment to educating for liberation. And meanwhile, the world goes on.
We know that our financial contributions to this congregation comes from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. This morning, we share our gifts with the International Convocation of UU Women for their campaign to fund education for Ukraine refugee children in Romania. From the campaign, 22 school-aged children are learning to read and write in Ukrainian Cyrillic. In accordance with the national curriculum of Ukraine, in addition, the refugee children study math, English, music, physical education, and arts and crafts. They also receive a warm meal daily. Teacher salaries, space rentals, and meals total $6,000 per month. The video is a short glimpse into their classroom. Here are the different ways you can donate. Those in the sanctuary may give cash, checks, or donate electronically. Text to the number in your order of service or visit our website under the giving page. Please write or type the date of your offering in the memo line or comment field. If you are visiting for the first time, either in person or online, you are our guest. The most valuable thing you can offer at this moment is your contact information so we can stay connected beyond this Sunday. In-person attendees can find a physical visitor card in the pew racks in front of you. Please complete it and put it in the collection plate. Information about how to give online and how to complete the virtual visitor card will be projected on the screen, so our friends live streaming at home have access to this information. After this information is displayed, all of us will view some of the contributions to UU Lent from this past week. Today's UU Lent theme is equity. We invite you to engage one another with the question, where do you recognize equity? Where do you recognize equity's presence and absence in your day-to-day life? The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received. Those who wish to do so are invited to join in the unison affirmation. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build a beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant today to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. Please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our closing hymn, number 205, in the gray hymnal, Amazing Grace.
Immerse yourself unapologetically in what it means to be Unitarian Universalist in these days. Then go out into the world and live knowing that your faith matters. May the poetry of our hearts set us free.
Please read together the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The service has ended, but our life of service continues. Let's continue the conversation in the Sims room and then gather in the parlor at noon.
Thank you, Cheryl.